Hey guys, and welcome to this week's Paranormal Q&A video. In this video I try to answer as many of your questions as I can in as much detail as possible, but I get so many questions every day that I can't answer them all. So if I don't get to your question in this video, don't worry, just drop it down in the comments and I'll answer it as soon as I can. So without further ado, let's jump into the first question. Treasure asks, could you try using the computer for the spirit communication again to see if you get a better outcome than you did last time? Okay, so I've included this question because almost every single week in the comments somebody asks me to repeat this experiment, and I just wanted to have a solid answer so that I don't have to keep repeating myself in the comments answering them. So a couple of months ago I did an experiment where I left the PC on with a Word document and just put type your message here, and lo and behold, so some letters got typed out. You know, you could argue it was saying hello, help, but there was a jumble of letters and that's what happened, and it was interesting. But the thing with it was that it was relevant at the time, because the video before that I posted was they were messing around on the computer. I think it was following a meditation session, and the activity was a bit heightened in here. They were messing around on computer, you could see like the mouse moving and stuff, and so I thought, well, if I just do the same thing, just leave the computer on, they might type a message and I might get something that way. Now after that, obviously, because it worked, of course I tried it again. I want to keep getting better stuff, but I never got a response, and I think it's just because at the time they were already messing with it. I don't think it's that like they did it because I'd asked them to do it. And this is the point I was trying to make actually in the most recent experiment videos, that they're not like, I don't know, they're not slaves. They don't just do everything I ask them to do. Like it's trial and error. There's so many experiments that I've done that I've got absolutely no responses that I never post it. So if you see anybody asking in the comments for me to repeat the computer typing experiment, just let them know that I am trying. But I've not as of yet got anything out of it, and you guys will be the first to know if I do. Marta asks, how often do you sage the house or you, and why do you think in the beginning that the evil entity was around you? Could it have been the house? To answer the first part of your question, I sage the house once a week, and if I do a particularly heavy session, investigation, or like experiment of some kind, then I will probably do it again afterwards, just to be on the safe side. Now I don't know if that's too much, too little, but it works for me, and it seems to be keeping things as clear as I like it, so I'm not complaining at that. That's just my opinion. So as for the dark entity and why it was around, this is a mystery to this day. I genuinely have no idea why it was around. I've thought about it. I've been to the house. Like, there was no activity in the house before we got there. I hadn't experienced any activity before I got there. It was about 2 years into living there that Robert started to notice things happening, and even then it was just mild stuff, almost like residual haunting stuff, footsteps and things possibly moved, but we weren't sure things had moved. And then it was only once I started actively investigating and seeking it that things sort of heightened. So I don't know if it was my investigating that brought this dark entity in, or if my investigating gave this dark entity more energy and then it got worse and worse. So like I said, it's a complete mystery. If I was to literally grasp at straws and give you some kind of definitive answer, I'd say it was brought in with something. Like, my mum would buy antique stuff from time to time. Maybe on the off chance one of them had an attachment and that's what brought it in. But like, that is literally just a guess. Like, I don't think that's necessarily what happened. It's just if there was anything out of the ordinary, it would probably be something like that, because there were no Ouija boards done or anything like that. I never investigated before the activity started, and there was no activity before Robert started noticing it, so anyone's guess. Scott asks, what would you consider the Holy Grail of evidence? Okay, so before they would have said that the Holy Grail would have been like a full body apparition, because like the full body of something that's not there, it's got the features, got the limbs, that is amazing. Like that in itself is absolutely amazing, and I've caught that. But the problem is nowadays that's not enough, because everything can be replicated. So I think the Holy Grail has to be something that will fully convince somebody that doesn't already believe in it. like, I'm not out to try and sway anyone, make anybody believe in the paranormal or anything like that. I think everybody has to decide for themselves. I think very much, no matter what I show you, some people just require that personal experience, and that's fine. I'm not, like I say, I'm not trying to convince anyone. And so, for those particular people, I think the holy grail of evidence would be personal experience. I don't think there's anything I could personally capture right now, no matter how much equipment I throw at the camera and all this stuff goes off at once. I just don't think that would be enough for some people. I think the only way, the only evidence that would suit that particular person is a personal experience, and to see something themselves that they just can't explain, that shocks them to the system. And I think that's got to be it. I think they've got to see something with their own eyes. Teresa asks, what is the paranormal podcast you listen to? I'd really like to try it as well. Thank you so much. Okay, so the podcast I listen to is Real Ghost Stories Online. They're pretty much on any podcast platform you can think of. They're even here on YouTube. So whatever you use, just give them a search and you're guaranteed to find them. They're hosted by Tony and Jenny Brewski, and Tony, he worked in radio pretty much his entire life, so you can guarantee that they're really well produced podcasts every single time. They do 3 podcasts a week, reading ghost stories, like interviews and things like that. It's a really, really good podcast. I advertise it because I genuinely love the podcast, not because I'm paid to advertise it. I think they just deserve the shout out and the time you guys give them if you're going to give them a listen. So do go over and check them out and let me know what you think of them, because like I say, I'm a big fan. Fallon asks, do you see yourself as a paranormal expert? No, absolutely not. I don't think it's possible to be a paranormal expert. I just don't, because none of it is fact. It's all opinions and experiences. And you can get somebody that is particularly experienced in the paranormal and they have a strong understanding of what they think are the causes of like spirits and poltergeists and things like that. But an expert, no. I guess there are no factual documentation of it. There are no major scientific experiments to back it up. So I don't see how somebody could be considered an expert, because there are no definitive answers. Myself, I would consider myself one of those experienced people. I've seen some stuff, I've been through some stuff, and so when you see me on here sharing my opinions, that's all it is. It is just my opinion. I'm not telling you these are the facts, you should listen to me because I'm a paranormal expert. I'm saying that from my own experience, this is my understanding, and I think people just want that opinion. They don't necessarily want it from an expert as such. I think it's the opinion that matters, and that's how we're going to advance anyway. Is that people just gotta share their opinions, and then people can research more into those opinions and see if they are fact or not. And so, I don't know. No, I don't believe there's such thing as a paranormal expert myself. I'm just here to share my experiences with you. Sean asks, to this point, science doesn't yet have a complete understanding of the universe, and as new phenomenon pops up, it must be modified to include these in its explanation. Do you believe it possible that this is a natural occurrence that will one day have a scientific explanation, or is this beyond the scope of science? Now it's interesting because the actual term paranormal, the idea of it is that it's beyond the scope of normality, and even though I personally think spirits are a fact of life, I think they're around, because there's no facts to actually back that up. There's lots of evidence, but it's all disputable evidence. I think it's a matter of us encouraging the right people to take those scientific experiments that step further and to get a good scientific study to back it up. And I think there's got to be one bit of data that we're missing, something that will just blow it out of the water and really make things clear and solidify it as a fact instead of being an unusual occurrence. And I think it's funny because at that point, it's no longer paranormal. If we can prove without a shadow of a doubt that spirits exist, then that is normal now. It's not paranormal anymore. It's a perfectly natural occurrence. It's a fact of life. And I personally think we will be able to do that one day, but it just requires everyone to continue doing what they're doing and searching for new evidence. Carl asks, I have a question to ask. Do you like horror movies, especially haunting movies? If so, how well do you think hauntings are depicted in movies? I absolutely love horror films. Horror films are by far my favourite, especially the paranormal ones, because I've always personally thought that with things like a slasher film, like you have a level of control with a human attacker. Like you feel like you can kind of fight them off to a certain extent, but with the paranormal, you don't have that. It's that lack of control that is so terrifying. Like, you can't use your regular human senses to defend yourself. And as I say, like, the lack of control is what makes them so scary. And as for the depictions of hauntings and how accurate they are, it really depends on the film. I mean, you look at things like the original Paranormal Activity, like, that was absolutely amazing. I think it was so subtle, you never saw too much, you missed a lot of the activity. It was them finding the aftermath that was so scary. And so they did it quite well. I think that was pretty good. But like all horror movies, they've kind of got to escalate. So every film after that gets worse and worse until eventually it's just a lot of things just getting thrown at you within the space of a week. And I think that's where the paranormal haunting movies fall down, is that, one, they escalate too quickly. Most hauntings, it doesn't go right, infestation in day one, and then by the end of the week the person's possessed. Like, it takes a long time for a demonic haunting to break a person down. Like, it's not an overnight thing. And then on top of that, it's the seeing. Like, you see too much. Like, they feel that they have to scare you, so they create some big boogeyman, some monster to be on screen, and that's your villain. That's the demon that's been haunting you. And it's a lot of the time it's just not like that. You don't physically see what it is that's oppressing you in real cases. I mean, some people do. I mean, you don't. I can't speak for everybody, but in my own opinion and stories that I've read, like, most people don't see them. So I think it's good. It depends on the film. Most of them start, like, the first half of most haunting films is 100% accurate, but then, like, they are movies, so they've got to escalate at the end of the day and scare you however they can. Zach asks, so I live in this house that I've just moved into. Every once in a while I see out of the corner of my eye a fleeting shadow. Is there any way to check, see if I am actually seeing this, or my mind is playing tricks on me? Now, I'm no expert, but personally I wouldn't worry too much about just seeing fleeting shadows, because your eyes can play tricks on you. I mean, the question is, has there been anything else happened, or is it just the fleeting shadows? Because if there's other activity, it's kind of checked itself. Like, you already kind of know that there's something paranormal going on. But as for the shadows alone, I wouldn't worry too much. I wouldn't consider them paranormal until something else happens. Now, if you really did want to go ahead and investigate it, just be aware that by starting to investigate and asking questions, you're making it aware that you know it's there, and you're giving it some attention, so that it's always possible that it will continue to do it, and it might start to do more and more. So if the fleeting shadows are something you can live with, I would probably just leave it. If there's more activity and you can live with it, I would probably just leave it. But if you're 100% set on it, maybe reach out to some paranormal groups that already have the equipment, rather than going out and buying lots of stuff to investigate yourself. Just to speak to somebody that already does that stuff, and see if they'll come in and give you an answer without you needing to put yourself in any major risk. So, but do fact check the groups, because you don't want them coming in provoking anything that's there. You want them to be decent, stand-up people, and treat it with respect, because end of the day it's your home, and you need it to stay a friendly, open place. Joe Monkey Boy asks, do you think all spirits know they are dead before you ask them how they passed? Could come as a bit of a shock. No, I don't think all of them are aware of it. I think it's very difficult, because, like, you can't really generalize. Obviously every spirit's different, so you get some that if they kind of, I think if they accept the death before it happens, then they're likely to be aware of it afterwards. Like, they know they've passed. But these are the ones that they've accepted it, so they kind of move straight on. But it's the spirits that like, the death comes as a bit of a shock, like it's unexpected, or like some kind of accident or something. I think it's them that will either not be able to accept it and kind of block that out, or are just completely unaware of it. Like, they've just got up in spirit form and just started going about their business, completely oblivious to the fact that they've actually passed away, and so they think they're acting normal and can't understand why no one's talking to them. And so it's difficult, because how else are you supposed to let this person know that they've died? Like, there's got to be that hard conversation at some point. I think it's the only way to really let them know. You can't let them down softly with that, really. You can say it as nice as you like, but I think no matter what, finding out that you've passed away is going to come as a shock. So yeah, it's difficult to say for sure. Obviously, that's a very generalized answer, but I think every spirit's different, and so yeah, it could come as a bit of a shock. I agree, but how else are we supposed to let them know? Maria asks, I get that electric tingle all over. It actually hurts sometimes, like my skin is puckering, if that makes sense. What's the deal with heat though? Do you ever get that? I get the coldness, but sometimes I get a warm cloak kind of feeling too. If anyone can make sense of this for me, that would be great. Okay, so one, I perfectly understand what you mean by that electric tingle and that kind of that puckering feeling. It's like your skin kind of gets tight. Like it's when you get goosebumps and you kind of get them really strong. Like it gets really tight. I can't say that I've ever felt it to a point that it hurts. I think that's unusual. I'll definitely kind of look into that. But as for like the coldness, I think everyone understands the coldness. I think the spirits themselves, they draw energy from the heat, the warmth in the room, and that's what creates the cold spots. Now, it has been known that they can also kind of do the reverse, like they can warm a place up, and I think maybe that's like the opposite. Like we see them as drawing energy from the heat. What if when you're feeling that kind of warm, enveloping sort of warmth, that is actually a transference of energy? So like they are surrounding you with that energy as opposed to drawing the energy from around you. Like they're putting that around you, and so maybe that's what causes the sort of the warmth feeling. I think I have felt it in the past, but I never attributed it to anything. I'm just trying to picture it. Like it was in an investigation like months ago. I think I was doing some kind of experiment, and I know exactly what you mean. Like it's like you just get like, it's kind of like the warm fuzzies. Like you just like putting on a warm blanket or a coat or something. Like you're literally wrapped in this warmth. And I kind of never thought of it because, you know, sometimes you just get a bit flushed and you get a bit warm. So I never really attributed it to anything because I'd never considered the warmth as a paranormal occurrence. It's always been the cold and stuff, but it's unusual. But yeah, it definitely does come in both forms. From my research, it does happen that there are cold and warm, and I think it's all down to the energy. Starship asks, do you ever get a weird feeling someone's watching you when you're having sex or doing something private? That entity seems to be around you all the time, so I would imagine you would feel uncomfortable sometimes. Yeah, even though you went like super private there, I do understand exactly what you're asking. Like those private moments, like in the shower, yeah, having sex, or like on the toilet or something like that. Like it is a consideration. And a lot of people wonder how you get by when you know you're haunted, and you kind of still have to do those things. Your life can't just be put on hold. And I think the thing you just gotta do it. I mean, who are they gonna tell about it for a start? Second thing is, like, Anna and Daniel, they've been very respectful. They've listened to my rules. They don't go in the bedroom, or at least I've not. Obviously, I can't see them doing it, but I've not noticed any activity in the bedroom. Like generally, for the most part, they're very respectful of that, and I think it's very much down to the individual spirit. I'm sure there are spirits out there that would sneak a peek if they could. And I just think you can't worry about that. I'm sure if what I believe is true and spirits can kind of wander, they're not always tied down to a particular place, then it's perfectly possible that absolutely anybody in the private moments could be being watched by a ghost, but you don't think about that. You just kind of put it out of your mind and sort of crack on, because you've got to do it, and you can't put your life on hold because of somebody that's already had their life, if you know what I mean. So I think for the most part they'll be respectful, but yeah, just it is what it is. Cash asks, with all the activity, how much sleep do you get on average? To be honest, I still get my 6 to 8 hours like almost every night. It's very rare I lose sleep over it, and it's kind of, I've explained on here before that it's not like it's active every night. There's not footsteps and things getting moved around and thrown about in my kitchen every single night. It is still maybe once a week, like you kind of capture that kind of thing. Mostly, the times I lose sleep are if I'm doing an investigation and I'm staying up later to do it. I'll usually deal with having less sleep, but I'll try to catch up when I can the next morning if I can, if not later on. maybe the day after, after an investigation, when the activity in the house is a little bit higher, things might happen and I have to get up and go have a look around. I might lose an hour of sleep there, but generally it's just normal. Like, there are noises like creaking and stuff, but like I sleep through that generally, or I'll wake up for a second and go, oh, and then back to sleep I go. Like, it's not really as bad as it looks, because you guys are only seeing the times when the activities happened. There's countless nights where I've filmed and just nothing's happened at all. It's been complete silence. So yeah, generally I sleep all right, so don't worry about that. Rachel asks, hi Michael, do you believe there is a heaven or a hell? Okay, so I'm going to touch on this briefly because I have a big theory I'm working on kind of with spirits and how they cross over and things like that. So this is obviously a part of that. So to start with, one, I'm not religious at all. I don't necessarily believe in a heaven or a hell, like eternal torment and, you know, the pearly gates and things like that. That just, it doesn't appeal to me. It's not something I've believed in. Now, that's just my opinion. That's how I feel. But my theory itself, it kind of works on the idea that a spirit energy comes from the mind. The same as a person, like everything starts up here. And so when a spirit crosses over and it becomes earthbound, for example, it is the mind that has stopped them moving on. Like if they've got unfinished business, they're the only person that knows that, and it's knowing that they've got this business to take care of that stopped them crossing over. Now, with regards to energy, energy itself doesn't just disappear, it transforms into something else, and so a spirit appears through energy transference of some kind. And so when you help the spirit fulfill whatever unfinished business it had, it is then transformed into whatever comes next. And I think this is the crossing over process, if you know what I mean. And so whatever their ideal is, whatever they think comes next, if it's heaven or whatever, then they can give themselves that by accepting everything that has happened. They can accept they've passed on. They can accept that it's time for their energy to move on to what comes next. And then because it's all comes through state of mind, maybe their mindset is what creates the heaven that they move on to, if you know what I mean. So any kind of eternal bliss, they can do that because their mind can give them absolutely everything they want in that state. And so their mind can affect the energies around them and create whatever comes next. And so maybe that's what it is. And then the idea of spirits coming back is because they never really left. They just, their energy became something else. And I mean, you could take that further and start talking about reincarnation, but just as a slight overview, that's kind of something I'm working on. I'm not saying necessarily I 100% believe that myself yet. Obviously, I'd very much like to prove that if I could, but it's just a little theory I'm working on with regards to that. So I don't think it's a short answer to it, so I'll just kind of leave it there. And so that's it for this week's Q&A, guys. I hope I answered your questions sufficiently and in enough detail. If I didn't get to your question in this video, don't worry. Like I say, just drop it down in the comments and I'll answer it as soon as I can. So thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I'll post any and all activity as and when I get it.